Finally, at long last.
Stab.
Episode 7 of Murder Drones is completely out.
Best episode of Murder Drones yet?
Abso-freaking-lutely. We got incredible pacing, incredible animation, whatever the heck AJ was smoking when making the soundtrack. And of course, we got answers, plenty of answers. In fact, I can confidently say that episode 7 has single-handedly resolved all of the lore questions of the show, thus paving the way for an exciting season finale. But maybe you didn't quite get what was going on. Maybe some parts of the episode didn't sit right with you. For example, why did the Absolute Solver try to kill Uzi or N? Why did Nori want to reunite with Khan back at the surface? And most importantly, what happened to the 2 sentinels that were guarding the cabin fever labs? Did they go make robo babies? Ever since the release of episode 5, I've been making many theory videos on this channel. I'm happy to say that many of my theories have been confirmed in episode 7. On the flip side, however, many theories were also debunked as well. A nice balance, over which a couple key questions remain. What were the Absolute Solver's motives throughout the entirety of the show? How does the big reveal of episode 7 fit into the plot? And how will the season ultimately end? If you want to discover all of these answers, then sit back and relax. This ride is bound to be pretty wild. Starting with the small victories. Let's give ourselves some credit. First off, episode 7 confirms our suspicions. The disassembly drones were created by the Absolute Solver. They were infected them with a nerfed version of the parasite in order to control them. This is outright confirmed by the flashback we got by the start of the episode, and is further hammered in by Nora's note later on. As we can see here, the objective of the disassembly drones in Copper 9 is to destroy every single Solver host on the planet. Now, of course, one question beckons. Why would the Absolute Solver order the disassembly drones to kill its own kind? Wouldn't it be better for the Absolute Solver to expand on its numbers? Well, we'll cover this in just a minute. Another theory that got clear confirmation is that Nori and Yeva caused the collapse of Copper 9, much like I predicted. However, nuance alert, the core collapse didn't exactly happen the way I imagined. In my core collapse theory, I stated that both Nori and Yeva were fully possessed, but as we can see in the episode, they were fully patched before the explosion happened. So, while we are here, let's talk about the patch then. Much like I predicted in my episode 7 teaser analysis, this patch exorcises the Absolute Solver's corruption. So, what does it really do exactly? Well, let's take a look at Nori and Yeva throughout the episode. Yeva was already patched by the time she came into the scene and can use Solver powers no problem. Meanwhile, Nori got her arm cut off in the flashback, but as she woke up in the surface, her arm regenerated with Solver powers. Later on, Nori would get killed by a disassembly drone and would escape to the cabin fever labs as a corrupted core. However, it seems that Nori can't regenerate her original drone form and is condemned to live on in this core state. So, with all of this in mind, it seems like the patch is able to make a Solver host keep using their powers, all at the price of severely slowing down host regeneration. This little MacGuffin, believe it or not, is key to the Absolute Solver's motives in the show. But again, we'll cover why in just a moment. Parallel to the core collapse theory, we also got confirmation of another one of my theories, that both Doll and Uzi were falling to possession all this time. With this piece of evidence, we then know full well that Doll was the drone behind both of the Absolute Solver scenes in episode 4. The Absolute Solver's hands would come into the scene, with Doll appearing just a moment later. Speaking of episode 4, episode 7 also confirms another theory, that serial designation S was simply referring to the Sentinel drones, and that they wouldn't appear in the season finale as a new character, much like I predicted. This was very much set in stone from the very beginning, and I highly doubted a new character would come into the picture in the slightest. Episode 7 also makes it abundantly clear that emotions are at the core of Solver instability. Strong emotions are not just key to fall to possession, they're also the key to get out of it.
Hey lady, you don't frickin' own me!
Hole in one!
Still, Let's not just forget that Yuzi over here hasn't been patched at all. While she's been able to escape from possession by the end of the episode, all the ingredients point to her possibly being repossessed in episode 8. We'll explore this idea a tad later. And last but not least, we also got confirmation of the mysterious character, Serial Designation X, coming into play in episode 7. This one character has been hinted at many times throughout the show, particularly in some scenes in episodes 2 and 4. Aside from that, she was also hinted at in the episode 6 promotional poster. Given her hair design, I imagined Serial Designation X to be Sin, appearing in episode 7. Lo and behold, that is exactly what happened. We know this one drone to be Sin, as she holds the same smudged armband Sin was wearing in episode 5. So yeah, much like Liam Vika's confirmed, this one drone is Sin, and she is indeed wearing Tessa skin. All of these theories were completely correct in our end, so we can gladly pat ourselves on the back for a job well done.
Lord Drone, hang on. Didn't you once say that Tessa being Sin would be completely unreasonable?
You know, with the benefit of hindsight. Okay, fine. Let's open the trash can of shame. While we got many theories right, there are also many theories were a complete miss. Let's ridicule ourselves for a bit. So, the first theory that episode 7 debunks is the hypothesis on how the singularity would start. Under this hypothesis, I stated that there would be multiple possessed drones in the cabin fever labs. They would sacrifice themselves, ultimately combining their powers to reenact the singularity in Copper 9. However, this is completely far from the truth, as only one host is needed to destroy the planet. One video into the dump. Another theory I got wrong was the X-Visor theory. Under this theory, I stated that an X-Visor appears whenever a core string has changed its value. Conversely, an error 606 message appears whenever a core string has been removed. We know this is factually true, thanks to the zombie drone tape in episode 5. Knowing this, I stated that the X-Visor scenes for disassembly drones happen because of Sin's admin rights. As the admin rights change the absolute solver string from true to false, this would explain any X-Visor scenes in the show for disassembly drones. The way I saw it at the time, the admin rights would be a way for Sin, a host trying to escape corruption, to prevent the disassembly drones from being fully possessed by the absolute solver, thus retaining their free will. However, this is completely false, as stated in episode 7.
You know, you're one of the main reasons I wanted your team to retain your personalities.
If the absolute solver has free reign over the disassembly drone's code and personalities, then the admin rights over the parasite are not controlled by the host, but rather by the parasite itself. There's a case to be made as to whether the absolute solver would turn off the absolute solver string for N back in episode 1. But much like all previous questions, we'll see why in just a second. For now, another video into the trash can of shame. So, there is no such thing as a good Sin theory, or at least, so it seems. The absolute solver's bond with its host has been such that there seems to be no such thing as host freedom in the first place. The original host is completely powerless against the absolute solver, and so, we should treat Sin, Tessa, and the absolute solver as if these characters were all one and the same. Therefore, combined Sin theory, or at least the second half of it, also goes into the trash can. The copium perhaps was too much. And finally, the big elephant in the room. The most incorrect prediction I've ever made. The entire episode 7 plot, made with just the few frames we got in teaser 2. This is why I'm usually scared to make big leaps of faith to begin with. We got some narrative beats correct, like the meaning of the patch, Yuzi falling to true possession, or the singularity starting by the end of the episode. But of course, the remaining 90% of the video was painfully wrong. But while I'm here, allow me to defend myself for a bit. Both teaser 1 and teaser 2 have many shots that were edited or left out. For example, there's this one shot in episode 7, which purposely omits Doll's dead corpse. Or this one shot a bit later, where you can see that Yuzi's hand light was yellow in the teaser. Moral of the story, never trust Glitch ever again. And of course, second moral of the story.
Never trust Lord Drone whenever he does a teaser analysis.
Exactly. Episode 7's big reveal still has people talking. Tessa being a big sassy imposter. Tessus, if you may. The opinions are certainly divided. Some people think that Tessa being Sin is a masterstroke of subverting expectations, while others think that the reveal was merely there for shock value. I can sort of sympathize with the latter. There weren't very clear signs of this reveal in earlier episodes, and in fact, one could argue that Glitch Productions purposely threw red herrings, making us believe that Tessa was in the good side all this time. But I digress. At the end of the day, we're here to answer one question. Why did the Absolute Solver head to Copper 9 as Tessa? Does this reveal make any sense in the timeline at all? Well, surprisingly, it does. And if there's something episode 7 finally resolves, it's the full timeline of the show, along with the Absolute Solver's detailed plan to conquer Copper 9. So, let's dive into the events of the show once again, from start to finish, now with all of the evidence episode 7 provides. Perhaps this new reinterpretation is the one true answer we all needed. As we know from episode 5, the Absolute Solver takes possession of Sin in the junkyard. Then Tessa later adopts the drone into the Elliot mansion. From here, the Absolute Solver intends to make the Elliot mansion the ground zero for the Singularity on Earth. Its influence extends to all the drones inside the Elliot mansion, resulting in the massacre at the gala. However, the Absolute Solver also has more intentions besides that.
You will not have to discard your pets, and I will not discard you.
In the Gala massacre, the Absolute Solver also kills Tessa in the process, wearing her body as a skin suit. Later on, the Elliot mansion is destroyed, with a gigantic black hole signifying the start of the Singularity. The Absolute Solver also creates the disassembly drones, a nerfed version of the Solver drones that uses firepower instead of the usual Solver powers. With this nerfed version of the parasite, they are all easier to control at once. They would murder everybody on Earth, as a looming black hole consumes the planet little by little, and so, over time, the Earth gets finally destroyed. The Absolute Solver would then extend its influence to other planets, consuming them as the corruption spreads throughout the universe. However, the humans don't just idly sit down and watch. All the way in Copper 9, the J.C. Jensen scientists start performing experiments with many selected drones, in order to understand the Absolute Solver's parasite and mutation. With this in mind, the idea is to develop a patch to cure drones from all Solver influence, while still retaining Solver powers. During the process of the patch's creation, many drones die. Some of them are not affected by the Solver's parasite, while others become completely corrupted, and are put to rest instead. With so many of their numbers dwindling, Riddler's team attempts to perform the recovery of a corrupted drone named Nori through the use of the crucifix. At this point, the patch had already proven successful, as Eva had already been patched by then. She was called in for action, in case the J.C. Jensen scientists had any need of her powers to contain Nori. Of course, we know what happens next. Nori gets patched by Eva, the crucifix disappears into the Solver hole behind, and the rest is dumb stupid history. After the core's collapse, Nori and Eva wake up in the surface after some time. They are both completely patched, meaning that they can still use their Solver powers, but have little to no regeneration. Let's just say that the creation of this patch poses a great threat to the Absolute Solver's intentions. If the patch had been replicated, and if further research had been made, J.C. Jensen could have theoretically made an army of Solver-powered drones without Solver influence. They would have fought the Absolute Solver and its disassembly drone army, ultimately undermining the Absolute Solver's plans for universal expansion. And what's worse, the patch could free any possible hosts from Solver influence, turning them against the Absolute Solver. Besides the destruction of Copper 9, this is the prime reason why the Absolute Solver sends the disassembly drones to Copper 9. It wants to see the planet destroyed, but it also wants to make sure that there is not a single Solver-powered drone outside of its grasp. And so, the disassembly drones finally arrive to Copper 9, tasked with two main missions.
Step 1. Clear drop zone of life and construct spires.
By killing all possible drones, the chances of them killing a Solver-powered drone are higher. For example, this is what happened to Eva, killed by B as she arrived in Copper 9. Without any solver regeneration, she wasn't able to put up a fight to stop the threat. The second mission, of course.
Enter labs with this symbol.
There are 3 main reasons as to why. 1. To kill any straggling solver-powered drones laying around. 2. To find and destroy the patch that cures these drones from solver corruption. And 3. To enact the singularity in the church and destroy the planet for good. The disassembly drones carry out these orders to a T. However, there is just one little issue. That the disassembly drones are completely unable to enter the cabin fever labs facilities. Apparently, they're mauled by sentinels every time they try to enter. It seems like some silly drone takes a lot of joy in extracting their most valuable parts, guiding the sentinels towards them. So yeah, Alice is actually the MVP of this entire show, defending a whole ass planet from the absolute Solver's army. Perhaps she should have stayed alive after all. Anyway, let's talk about Nori for a minute. Nori is an SJW liberal with purple hair that listens to Nightcore and is canonically also a furry. But aside from that, after the disassembly drones arrive to Copper 9, Nori gets killed by one of them. It's unclear whether it was actually N or not. Sure, we have this one line in episode 7.
Hey, you look familiar. Watch the road.
However, there's also this one line later in the episode that puts a wrench into that thought.
Bloody dormant. Those things killed your frickin' mother!
It's odd to me that Nori wouldn't say that N specifically killed her right then and there. Of course though, Nori's memories are a little bit jumbled up. Some of her memory files were completely deleted thanks to the Solver's corruption. Not only that, but Nori would have multiple visions of the hive mind, always semi-knowledgeable about the absolute Solver and its intentions. This is a reason why Nori describes the absolute Solver and Sin as one and the same, even though Nori has never seen Sin before.
Why Sin after her own murder pen? You stupid or something?
If you ask me whether N killed her or not, I would say to wait until episode 8 to have any clear confirmation. Seems awfully rich to reach out a definite conclusion as of yet. In any case, Nori dies by the hands of a disassembly drone. Khan puts her out of her misery, and the next thing we know of her, she's down in the cathedral, going into many corrupted tunnels to find the patch. Admittedly, it is a huge time skip, and I bet we're missing some key details about Nori's backstory here. Here's my take. I believe that Khan and Nori have been in cahoots since her very death. After she was killed, Nori agreed with Khan to put an end to the absolute Solver's threat in Copper 9. She would go to the cabin fever labs to retrieve the patch, while Khan would defend Outpost 3 from the disassembly drone invasion. Once Nori returned with the patch, Khan and the worker drones would focus on replicating it, creating an army of Solver-powered drones to stop the threat and take the fight to the absolute Solver. And so, that's how they part ways. Until they meet again, it's time for Outpost 3 to face its toughest battle yet. A team of 3 disassembly drones arrive in Copper 9, ready to follow the absolute Solver's directive. However, they are quite distinct from the rest. They retain their original personalities, as full possession is dismissed by the absolute Solver itself through their admin rights. They also have their memories jumbled up. They are fed a lie by the absolute Solver instead, that they are purging corrupted drones in the name of JC Jensen. However, it turns out that one of the disassembly drones suddenly defects from its intended purpose. This throws a wrench into the absolute Solver's master plan. If the absolute Solver's lapdogs can't follow its own orders, then they now become hindrances to eliminate. Once N defected, it became a target to kill. Jay tried to destroy him with a virus, and later in the episode, Jay and V would try to kill him. N comes off victorious of that fight, and so, the absolute Solver's hindrance lives on for another day. In episode 2, the absolute Solver would try to kill N again, a defected disassembly drone, while also killing Uzi, a Solver-powered drone that can be patched. It does this, while also trying to regenerate Jay, the most loyal disassembly drone in the team. And yet again, its efforts are ultimately thwarted. Both N and Uzi survive, and Jay's absolute Solver is destroyed. As V also defects from her original mission, the absolute Solver now starts getting desperate. In episode 4, the absolute Solver takes control of Uzi in order to kill both deserters. take notice of the fact that Solver Yuzi tried to kill V with nanite acid, which would immediately destroy her core. Once again though, this ploy is foiled by In himself, and so, the Absolute Solver changes its methods. If assassination doesn't work, then repossession will surely do the trick. In episode 5, the Absolute Solver causes N and V to pass out as it tries to delete its host's earlier memories. This would therefore render them without personality, and it would make them go back into its side once again. However, it seems that some hacker was in on the case. By the end of the episode, Yuzi restores N and V's memories and changes the admin rights to herself. This admin rights change makes it so that the Absolute Solver may never repossess N nor V ever again, as we saw it attempt in episode 7. With all of its plans failed to advance the destruction of Copper 9 or the Solver-powered drones, the Absolute Solver has one last and final card: Absolute Freaking Deception. The Absolute Solver itself arrives to Copper 9 disguised as Tessa, who is seemingly a JC Jensen technician. It is followed by a backup of Jay, retaining her memories from the time she was killed. This clone of Jay is completely unaware of Tessa's true identity and follows her orders without question. As both of them meet the main cast, the Absolute Solver accompanies them to retrieve the keybug in order to make its way into the cathedral. In the meantime though, the Absolute Solver tries to take care of some spring cleaning. When V is captured by Alice, the Absolute Solver shows no haste in going to save her. Indeed, V is a defected disassembly drone, and her death would only play into the Absolute Solver's intentions. Similarly, she takes control of Yuzi a tad later, which ultimately leads to Alice's death, which is also another Cabin Fever Labs test subject to kill. During this time, Tessa's real identity remains a secret to every character in the show. All of them, except for this one Sentinel drone, who could detect Sin's drone body through the spacesuit. As it bites into the Absolute Solver, its corruption is enough to make the Sentinel go haywire. Later in episode 6, the Absolute Solver takes control of Yuzi again, making up a path into the elevator. The Absolute Solver then instates Sen and Yuzi to hop in, leaving V on her own. But of course, as we now know, the Absolute Solver is perfectly content with having her out of the picture. With the way completely clear, the cathedral is finally on site. Episode 7 is the culmination of the Absolute Solver's plan. With the road paved ahead, only a few tasks remain. The first one is to eliminate all possible hindrances to its plans. The Absolute Solver causes a cave-in by getting Yuzi to use null powers in the middle of the mine. Later on, it goes over to N to drag him around the mines, only for Nori to barge in and save him. The next time we see the Absolute Solver, it checks on any possible Solver hosts that may be alive in the lockers, and then goes to consult the Cabin Fever Labs member list for any alive stragglers. With both Nori and Eva dead, only their offspring remain with Solver powers. The targets are finally locked, and so, the Absolute Solver kills Doll right after, then heads straight for Yuzi in the cathedral. Using its powers through the hive mind, the Absolute Solver pins Yuzi to a corner as the main host slowly moves to end her life. N finally comes in clutch to save Yuzi, resulting in the Absolute Solver's main body to become incapacitated. However, just in the nick of time, the Absolute Solver takes control of Yuzi, finally destroying the patch that threatened the Absolute Solver's intentions. From then on, the whole fight ensues. The Absolute Solver is perfectly content with letting Yuzi die, as she is a host that can possibly be good in some way as well. After Yuzi regains control however, the Absolute Solver finally takes cards in the matter again. Tessa reveals itself to be Sin all this time, dragging Yuzi and enter the Solver hole in the ground. As the Singularity finally begins, the ground shakes from below once again. Yuzi manages to free N from the Absolute Solver's grasp, giving him the spaceship keys to save him. And with that, the stage is finally set. With Yuzi's sacrifice, then mass destruction is officially at hand.
There's one thing about this episode that rubs me the wrong way.
Really? What exactly?
It feels way too complete. We know the last episode should be even crazier, but we have no way to predict what's going to happen.
Oh, that is exactly where you're wrong. Sure, Episode 7 leaves no stone unturned when it comes to lore, and at a glance, it seems difficult to predict what's going to happen next. However, we can actually try and guess the main narrative beats of episode 8, just by keeping some few key things in mind. Let's go through the bullet list. 1. Khan, Lizzie and Thad have arrived to the power plant facility, catching up with Jay in the process. Considering that Jay still believes she's following orders from Tessa, I suspect a confrontation will take place. 2. N has the keys to Jay's spaceship, and is lingering in the cathedral.
Catch me! Catch me! I'm still falling! Catch me! Thank you!
Let's not forget that the cathedral and the power plant are connected by the rift in the cave ceiling. 3. All this time, Lizzie and Thad have been talking about a secret friend in episode 7. It's heavily hinted that this secret friend might be V, who is still very much alive. I suspect that V was able to see through Tessa's lies in episode 6, as she was doubtful on relying on Jay for help. She called Lizzie instead, to watch over Jay and her current allegiance. 4. Yuzi has woken up in space, watching the singularity unfold. I don't suspect this is an illusion made by the absolute solver, but rather reality. Still, Yuzi comes to her senses in a similar fashion to Nori, who woke up in the surface after the core collapse. Considering that some time passed between the core collapse and Nori waking up, I suspect that this scene is very much a time skip. In this shot, we could be watching at some part of episode 8, and not necessarily the beginning of the season finale. 5. Excluding Sin, Yuzi is the only drone with solver powers in Copper 9 that has not been patched yet. The absolute solve might still be able to control her. 6. Considering that Nori also fell into the cathedral's hole before the singularity started, it is likely that she's also hanging around, be it in space or not. 7. The overall theme of episode 6, 7, and episode 8 is sacrifice. In episode 6, V sacrifices herself to help the rest of the team. In episode 7, Yuzi sacrifices herself to save N. And in episode 8, considering that these sacrifices line up with the Glitch Productions standees, we'll likely see N sacrificing himself for the future of Copper 9. And last but not least, 8. Liam Vickers wants the season finale of Murder Drones to be bittersweet. And considering Glitch's recent uploads, episode 8 will likely be the end of the series as a whole. We need an ending that can give some sense of finality. And those are all the key points for episode 8. Now, of course, we said to never trust me when doing episode predictions, but how about we do one last guess for the ride? Perhaps we might hit on all 6s for this one. Episode 8 starts with the confrontation between Con, Lizzie and Thad vs Jay. As Jay readies herself to engage in battle, N erupts from the chasm in the ground, holding the spaceship keys. Immediately after, N will try to convince Jay that Tessa was not who she seemed, before Jay shuts him off, labeling him as a traitor. Before Jay is able to draw her weapons towards N, V also comes out of the chasm, quickly reuniting with N, and trying to get Jay on their side. As Jay ponders in confusion, the planet shakes once again. From the blast by the end of episode 7, a black hole slowly starts forming around the planet as the sky turns a fiery red. From here, all of the characters, including Jay, now take a moment to discuss how to stop the singularity. The first one is to fight Sin back in the solver hole in the Cabin Fever Lab's mines. By killing the host with nanite acid, the singularity will stop. The other alternative though, is to completely cure Sin. If the host is patched off the parasite, then the singularity also ends.
Buttle Drone, the patch was destroyed in episode 7. Do you really think there are more versions of the patch out there?
Well, that is indeed a possibility. However, the show has already pointed to another patch to save Sin. The patch being, of course, uses admin rights. If user's hacking process can be condensed into a file, then this program can actually be used to cure Sin, preventing the absolute solver from controlling her from within. And so, this is how our protagonists will act. A small group of them will stay around the Cabin Fever Labs to battle the absolute solver, while the other team will come back to Outpost 3 in Jay's spaceship, in an attempt to create Yuzi's patch. Meanwhile, up in space, Yuzi wakes up, looking at the singularity beginning in Copper 9. After a while, Yuzi meets up with Nori, finally being able to have a conversation. Nori explains that Khan and her had plans to stop the solver, apologizing to Yuzi for their neglect all this time. And later after that conversation, Nori instates Yuzi to focus her powers in an attempt to solve a teleport back to Copper 9. Back at the surface, as Jay's spaceship returns to Outpost 3, they will have to deal with absolute solver tentacles pouring out of the ground, as well as any possible worker drones that could potentially be possessed to stop them. Eventually, however, they are able to condense Yuzi's admin rights into an USB, creating the patch to stop Sin. Meanwhile, the other team is busy fighting Sin. Just as they seem to be on the ropes, Yuzi and Nori return with the patch, ready to stop the nightmare in Copper 9. I suspect we will have an action sequence with Nori, Khan, Yuzi and N, where they are finally victorious to finally patch Sin to completion. And so, that's how the episode seemingly ends. The singularity finally stops, and the threat is now finally over. Or at least, so it seems. In the nick of time, the absolute solver controls Yuzi once again. As N quickly takes notice, he grabs Nori and Khan, putting them back to safety with the others at the surface. He asks everyone to get on the ship, warning them to flee the planet. And once the spaceship leaves, N flies back down to the planet's core in a final attempt to snap Yuzi out of corruption. However, this time, it's far too late. The singularity finishes, engulfing the planet completely. N and Yuzi are both killed in the process, as the rest of the main cast watches from afar in Jay's spaceship. And from then on, season 1 of Murdered Drones finally ends, with another planet falling victim to the absolute solver's grasp. Alright, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching this absolute behemoth. Took a long one to make. Unfortunately, we don't really know when the season finale will release. Still, I don't plan to keep this channel dry. New videos are still in the back burner in these coming months, so make sure to stay tuned for them. In the meantime, feel free to hang around the Elliott Mansion Discord server, which is now the 3rd biggest Murdered Drones Discord server just by invites alone. We have our gates open for you. Right then. See ya.